how caves are formed. Most caves form in areas where there's limestone rock and where there's a lot of rain. Here's why. The water sinks down through cracks in the limestone and collects in underground rivers. This water dissolves the cracks into wider cracks that get larger and larger over thousands of years. Eventually, whole areas collapse underground to form tunnels and caves. This is erosion on the inside of the earth. Acid makes caves too. Now, you may ask, how can water dissolve a hard rock? Well, as rainwater sinks through the ground, it picks up minerals that turn the water into a weak acid. The acid dissolves the calcite mineral that makes up limestone. In fact, you can even do a calcite test. All you have to do is put drops of vinegar on a likely rock. If it fizzles, it might be limestone. Cave formations. Cave deposits. As water underground runs through the limestone, it dissolves the rock's minerals. As the underground water evaporates in the cave, it leaves the minerals behind as wonderful deposits on the ceiling, floor, and walls of the cave. Famous caves. Mammoth Cave. A cave is a hollow area under the earth. Most caves are formed by underground water that dissolves limestone, a sedimentary rock. A cavern is a large cave, usually with many connecting tunnels and rooms. Lava caves are formed when tunnels that were carved by lava flows become empty. Borneo Caves. On Borneo, a Malaysian island in the Pacific, there are two sets of important caves. Sarawak Chamber is the world's biggest single cave room. It's big enough to hold 16 football fields. Naya Caves. Borneo Caves. On Borneo, a Malaysian island in the Pacific, there are two sets of important caves. Sarawak Chamber is the world's biggest single cave room. It's big enough to hold 16 football fields. Naya Caves is the site of an important discovery. Ancient tools and pottery were found there. They were left by Stone Age people living in Borneo over 40,000 years ago.
Faults are fascinating because they're giant cracks in the earth. Faults by Dorothy Ann. Click on the different tabs to investigate all the sections of my report. Kinds of faults. Kinds of faults. Faults are cracks in the rocks on the surface of the earth. When the rocks move on either side of the crack, that makes an earthquake. There are different kinds of faults. One kind is where rocks are shoved away in an up-down movement. This is called a normal fault. A reverse fault has the same up-down movement as a normal fault, but one side is being pushed on top of the other side. The third fault type has a side-by-side movement, where the rocks slip past each other. This is called a strike-slip fault. The San Andreas Fault in California is a famous strike-slip fault. Earthquakes. Shake, rattle, and roll. Earthquakes start way down at a spot inside the crust called the focus, which is where rocks release their pent-up pressure along a fault line. During an earthquake, shock waves start at the focus and move outward in all directions. What makes quakes? The rocks on both sides of a fault are always under pressure. They're always pushing. They want to keep moving past each other. But sometimes they get stuck, and all that pressure has nowhere to go. And so the pressure builds up until there's way too much of it. Then, when the two sides finally do break free, all that pent-up pressure is released in a violent rush. The rocks move past each other very quickly, and that quick release of pressure is what causes an earthquake. Metamorphic rocks. Regional metamorphic rocks. There are many different kinds of metamorphic rock. Slate is a metamorphic rock that is made from mudstone. They look very similar. Its lined-up minerals make it easy to split into thin sheets for blackboards or roof tiles. Schist is a glittery metamorphic rock with wavy lines of minerals and new crystals like garnets grow in it. The minerals and gneiss line up into black and white bands that look like a zebra's skin. But maybe the best known of all the metamorphic rocks is marble. Marble, made from limestone, is a beautiful rock that has been used for centuries to make statues and buildings. Tsunamis, or tidal waves. A giant wave. A giant wave. Tsunamis, which are sometimes called tidal waves, actually have nothing to do with tides, though they certainly are waves. Most of them are caused when faults in the ocean floor move and shove the ocean floor up or down. The shifting of the faults in the ocean floor sends shock waves into the ocean water, which creates enormous waves. When a tsunami reaches shallow water, near an island or a coast, it slows down and the water piles up, growing larger and larger as the water gets shallower and shallower. By the time it hits land, it has become a gigantic and dangerous wave. Long-distance tsunami. In 1964, there was a huge earthquake in Alaska. Enormous tsunamis caused by the quake destroyed towns along the Alaskan coast. Because the oceans are so big, there is time to warn people before the tsunami can get across the ocean. Disaster strikes. Some tsunamis are caused by volcanoes. During the famous 1883 eruption of the volcanic island of Krakatoa in Indonesia, the whole volcano, which was the whole island, collapsed into the ocean and caused numerous tsunamis. Thousands of people were killed by Krakatoa, but most died from the giant waves rather than from the eruptions.
The Grand Canyon by Tim. Click on the different tabs to check out all the sections of my report. Sedimentation. What? Sediments are grains of sand that are made of other rocks or minerals. Sediments can get moved around by wind, rain, rivers, glaciers, and oceans. When the little grains of sand drop out of the wind, water, or ice and are deposited on the ground, then that is called sedimentation. Those layers of sediment can get covered by other layers or strata, like the layers of a cake. The bottom layers of sediment can get scrunched down flat by the layers on top, and the weight from the strata on top eventually cements the tiny grains of sediment into solid rock. Rock factory. There are three kinds of sedimentary rock: clastic, organic, and chemical. Clastic rocks are formed from little pieces of broken rock. Sandstone is a clastic rock made of tightly packed sand grains. Organic rocks are made from plant or animal remains. Ocean plants and animals use calcite crystals to make their hard parts. When they die, the hard parts are left, and this makes the rock limestone. Chemical rocks are formed by chemical changes, such as evaporation. Rock salt is a chemical rock. It's what you'll find on the ground after a salty lake or sea dries up. Rock history. Sedimentary rocks are like history books that tell us the story of what Earth was like a long, long time ago. Think of sedimentary rocks as clues that can help us to figure out things like which areas were on land and which areas were underwater. For instance, pieces of limestone might tell us where a coral reef formed long ago, and a layer of coal might show us where a swamp or a prehistoric forest once lived. Fossils. Pictures of the past. Fossils are like nature snapshots from millions, even billions of years ago. If a prehistoric plant or animal got buried under layers of sand or mud, the softest part would rot away pretty quickly. But the hard parts like shells, bones, or tree trunks would be replaced over time by minerals. That's the way that most fossils are formed. But some are formed from the tracks that animals leave behind, like dinosaur footprints. These fossils are called trace fossils. Erosion.